Welcome to Photoactive, a podcast about photography and technology. I'm Kirk McElhearn.
And I'm Jeff Carlson.
You know, I was just thinking today, I need to update the insurance for my home office because I have these really valuable things in my home office. I have hard drives and SSD drives, and I didn't realize how valuable they are these days.
I thought maybe it was because you have cats and you just never know what sort of destruction can be wrought upon a home office.
No, not at all. And I didn't spend $10,000 on that Leica lens either because I don't have a body for it.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Yeah. Well, bullet dodge there.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's funny. I was thinking about this the other day, how the running joke was, because I care about you so much, I'm going to buy you some eggs for Christmas. Whatever it was when the price of eggs went up. And now it's like the same thing, only this is with memory storage and hard drives and all sorts of crazy things that had been going down in price for years and years, and now they're not.
And I did some research before the show. So I used to have spinning hard drives, a lot of them. I do backups and backups of backups and backups
Good man.
of backups of backups,
Good.
et cetera, et cetera. It looks like 4 years ago, I bought two 4-terabyte Samsung internal hard drive, SSDs. Sorry, I said hard drives because it is hard, but it's not hard. And I had bought them at the time because they'd gone down to about half price. I paid £260 each. And I wanted the advantage of SSDs. They're quiet, they're self-powered, fewer cables, etc. And it's about 4 years, which seems like a long time. And I looked today, you can't get the same thing here for under £400.
Wow.
And when I bought them, they had roughly gone down half in maybe a year and a half. And the one that I've got here that I'm just holding up to show Jeff, and this was one of your snapshot pics years ago, one of these little SanDisk portable SSDs. That's probably a 1 terabyte. I've got 1 terabyte and 2 terabyte all over the office. I've got a whole bunch of them. And they're all worth a fortune now.
Mm-hmm. Well, they're worth a fortune if you were to sell those or buy new ones. And we should probably point out, why is this happening? It's because of, you guessed it,
2 letters.
2 letters, F
AI.
and U. Oh, no, I'm sorry. AI.
It's because, and just before we started recording, I pointed out to Jeff that it's spinning hard drives that are getting expensive because the AI companies don't want SSDs. They want spinning hard drives. They have a lot of data and they need to store all that data. And the throughput that they need isn't as fast as SSDs when they're processing that data. So spinning hard drives have gone up probably a bit more than SSDs have.
Well, see, this is the problem. And actually, the spinning hard drive surprised me because most of what I had been reading was really focused on SSD and, more importantly, the components behind all of these. Like, not just this is a drive or this is a solid state drive. It's all the little bits inside that they need to create all of these. And so there are a lot of shortages coming up for RAM, especially because the AI companies need a lot of working memory to swap things in. This has kind of been the case for a long time, but you need more memory to store things so that you can have more persistent answers. So it doesn't just forget the first thing that you wrote because it needs to dump its
because
memory.
then it would have to reload all the data and reprocess it. And that would take more time and it would burn out more of the Great Lakes.
And that made sense in terms of needing components and needing chips to stock that up. But now it's bleeding out into everything that memory and storage touches.
And graphics cards, because it's actually the graphics chips that they use for AI. It's not CPUs, it's GPUs.
So all of these AI data centers, which are being built at a frantic pace, pouring billions and billions and billions of dollars into, they all have this insatiable need for all of this hardware. And that's where all of the supply is going because these big companies, Meta, Facebook, whatever you want to call it, they're all pre-buying as much stock as they can.
I look forward to all of these data centers being like abandoned strip malls.
Oh, wouldn't that be nice?
And being taken over by wildlife and cyberpunks. There's going to be a video game around, old data centers.
Yeah. And honestly, there's a 50-50 chance that that's going to happen because like how sustainable is all this? But for the moment, in our current reality, we have to deal with the fact that, for example, and we'll put a link in the show notes, Western Digital announced that they have sold all their hard drives for 2026.
They've sold all their hard drive capacity.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
Their
means
production.
they've pre-sold the drives that they're going to be making. So they won't have enough drives for retail, for people like us, is the problem.
Yeah.
Businesses has reserved them. Yet at the same time, we looked online, you can get a 32 terabyte NAS quality hard drive. So this is the best kind of hard drive that's meant to be running 24/7. 32 terabytes for $700. And that doesn't seem expensive when I remember 8 terabyte drives at, full-size drives were maybe $200 5 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And that even seemed pretty amazing.
That's if you get it now. And if you wait a couple months, then there might not be any left.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also I think that, what we see in stores, I know that this is going to be a shocking revelation, but there's also the possibility that what current stock there is going to go up in price because all of the retailers know that there's this coming surge for demand. So let's make a little more profit right now. I know it sounds crazy to think that retailers would jack up their prices based on demand, but
why would they do that? Yeah. Another imponderable is tariffs in the U.S. We don't see that. I'm not sure how these are affecting any of these products.
Oh, right. Yeah.
That's a big unknown because, the weather vane in the White House changes tariffs every week. So we don't know how these really apply. Mm-hmm. Anyway, if you're wondering why we're talking about this, it's because photos are data and data goes on drives, whether they be spinning drives or SSDs and memory cards. And, I've probably got a half a dozen 32 gigabyte memory cards in my drawer because every time it's a Black Friday or something, I say, can't hurt to buy another one. So I know I'm safe for a while on that.
Yeah.
But in terms of anything memory and storage, the prices are going up a lot. And it's even a question, will they be available?
Yeah, which is funny because when you come at this from the point of view of a photographer, you're thinking camera, I'm thinking flashes, I'm thinking lenses, all of that. And then I start thinking, oh, well, I also need SD cards and compact flash cards and all of those things. But you're right. After the point where you press the shutter, everything is storage. And that's going to be from storing it on your camera or storing it on your phone. Phones are going to also feel some of the squeeze of this, and it's a big, big, big question mark as to whether, is Apple going to eat into its famously huge profit margins to keep their upcoming phones affordable? I think by the time this episode airs, we're not going to be quite on Apple's next announcement. They announced that there's going to be an event on March 4th that will probably announce like an iPhone 17e. So it'll be like the affordable one. So is that going to have smaller amount of storage? Is it going to be a little bit more expensive, or will Apple?
I think they have to default. Aren't they all defaulting to 256 now on the base? I don't remember what the 16e was. It might have only been 128.
It's probably 128, I think, is still the floor, which for so long it was 64. So
yeah. And for so long it was 32. And then for so long it was 16 at a point that I wrote an article, might have been from Macworld, so this goes back a while, that you could not install everything on a 16 gigabyte iPad mini. You couldn't install the operating system and all of the Apple apps that you're expected to download, which GarageBand, the iWork apps and things like that. You could not install everything because of the amount of usable space out of 16 gigabytes.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And, following this just a little bit further, because this is AI, it's commonly accepted that you probably need at least 256 gigs of storage to run things like Apple Intelligence or Gemini or something like that, so that you have at least enough buffer on your device to work with that. So does that mean an inexpensive phone is just not going to have all the AI features? Maybe.
Yeah.
So we're sliding down a different rabbit hole.
Yeah, but this assumes that the inexpensive phone has the chip that can do Apple Intelligence. And I did have an iPhone 16e. I'm pretty sure it did most of the Apple Intelligence features that were available at the
Mm.
time, but maybe not all of them. It's like they're starting, in terms of Macs and iPads, they're starting to require more than an M1 for some of the
Mm-hmm.
features. So, I mean, this is, feature creep. Always, the processors are never good enough. I just want to point out before I forget that this is a good time for you to plug your book about storage, because you're the storage guy at Take Control, aren't you?
Yes, and that's a very good point. I was going to refer to it here in just a minute, but yeah, so I wrote Take Control of Your Digital Storage, which sounds, I mean, honestly, I will admit this, it sounds like the driest topic in the world, and suddenly it is not. The last edition was from June of 2025. I need to update it now just because as I was looking through it, I was like, I saw a little note that said, well, hard drive prices have been coming down and SSDs are now also coming down. So isn't that great? Because
Yeah.
it was very easy to just say, all right, go spend $100, get some storage. But one of the things that you mentioned when we're talking about SSDs and the life of SSDs is the way they store their memory. SSDs are they're sort of more finite than a spinning platter disk, because once it uses up the sectors on its memory, on solid state storage, like they can't be used anymore.
So it's like eating a box of saltine crackers.
It's like eating a box of saltine crackers, sure.
That after you've eaten the crackers, you can't get them back.
No,
I'm not sure it's that simple.
it's not that
I think
simple.
on
But
SSDs that sectors after they used a lot. But as we were both saying before the show, I've never had a problem on an SSD on a Mac. And it's not an external SSD that would worry me, even if I do a time machine backup daily. It's the Mac, which is reading and writing virtual memory files and, constantly writing files. And I've never had a problem. My last iMac lasted for 3.5 years before I sold it. Many of my laptops I've kept for 3 years. So is it a fake problem?
I don't think it's a fake problem, and I'm here knocking on all the wood that I have here because just for being superstitious, I've not had. I mean, I've had hard drives fail over the years. Internal spinning traditional hard drives in a laptop will just stop working at some points, just because it's so mechanical. SSDs are not mechanical; they're electrical, and so they're a lot more robust in that way. And also, I'll point out the memory that Apple specifically uses for their internal storage for the SSD in your laptop or your Mac Pro or whatever, that is really like a high quality, long lasting. It's better than what you will buy and put into an external enclosure, for example.
And it's on the chip as well. So it's not like it's a separate unit, I think, is it?
Right.
No, they're soldered.
It
The storage
depends,
is soldered because
yeah.
it can change from device to device. You can configure a Mac for a certain amount of storage, so it is soldered.
But you can't easily just like open it up and replace a bank of memory anymore. Like that's not really something you can do.
No, but the memory is etched onto the chip, the actual memory. And we used to talk about video RAM and normal RAM, and now it's they call it shared memory or whatever, because it's the same for both.
Right.
The storage, however, is separate. It's a separate chip that's soldered onto the system on a chip. If you ever took apart a Mac years ago, which I'm sure you didn't, I'm sure some of our listeners did, you remember all the different components that were inside. Most of those components are on a chip that's about, 2 inches square? No bigger than that.
Yeah. For all intents and purposes, you cannot upgrade the memory or replace the storage on your modern laptop. Yeah. So that's just how it's built, unfortunately.
So SD cards are an issue. And as I said, I've got a half a dozen SD cards, so I'm not worried right away. All of this makes me think, if you're in the market for upgrading your camera and you want to go from, say, 24 megapixels to 100 megapixels, maybe think twice about how big the files are, about how much storage you need, about how many SD cards you need, and all of that, because this is going to be a bottleneck going forward.
Yeah. And, it also depends on what kind of memory card you get. So, for example, I'm just looking at some prices on Amazon. And actually, to my surprise, things still seem very affordable, quote unquote, very affordable. But also, I was looking at not just SD cards. So, SD cards, I'm seeing, and I'll sort of scan by all the shifty generic names, but like a SanDisk Extreme 256 gig card is $65 here, which is not bad. 128 gigs are like $40, depending on. You're still in that $40 to $75 range, which I think is pretty reasonable. But then when you start looking at like the CF Express cards, which are the newer, they have more capacity, a lot more of the higher end cameras are starting to use these. I see like a 1 terabyte card for $519. And that seems expensive, but these have always been a little bit more expensive. 128 gigs for $105. It's not terrible. And I would say this is a really good argument for if you think you're going to need more storage, now is probably the time to pick up one of these.
So I'm looking at my previous orders in Amazon, and I bought in 2021, I bought a 64 gig SanDisk Extreme Micro SD XC memory card. It costs $13.99 and it's $19.99 now. I would have expected it to be more expensive than that.
This is also a thing that I find kind of perplexing. For some reason, the micro SD cards tend to be less expensive, which I would actually expect them to be a little more expensive because they're smaller components, but maybe not.
My guess is that the size of the component in the SD card is no different from the size of the component in the micro SD card. It's just the plastic.
Yeah, so I'm looking and I'm seeing a SanDisk Ultra 256 gig micro SD card for $43, $44.
So they're not that expensive yet. But remember, that's still, you need a few of them. So that's still $100 or $200 you're going to be spending on SD cards. If you haven't upgraded your SD cards in years, good idea to buy some. They don't last forever.
Well, and also what we don't know is what the current inventory looks like. So a lot of these could be, maybe these have been sitting in a warehouse for a while and haven't been affected by a lot of the stuff that's coming down the pike. It could be that there's just a good surplus of SD cards right now, which makes it even more of a good reason to pick up one or two right now. I mean, I don't know. I don't tend to have a lot of SD cards because given the amount that I shoot, I think I have like 4 or 5 active cards, and that does me just fine. But like you said, if you are upgrading to a 100 megapixel camera, then you're going to need bigger storage, just like higher capacity cards.
Also, as we were talking about with hard drives, they have a certain lifespan. If you haven't upgraded your SD cards in a while, it might not be a bad idea. I'm looking, I've got some from 2014. I don't think I own any of those from back then. I need to go through my SD cards and look. Good. One of the reasons, I mean, Amazon is a monopoly. One of the reasons I buy from Amazon is I can always go back and see my order history and I can find when I bought something. So this is a good time to check all my SD cards and see if there are any that are too old, even if I haven't opened them and they're too old.
You need to at least open them when they arrive.
Well, I do have a couple that I haven't opened. I know that. But it's the kind of thing that you need to be aware of, because if WD can't supply any more hard drives, right? And you've got a spinning hard drive and it's 4 years old and you're on the fence, you should replace it now, because if in 6 months' time you need that hard drive to store your photos, your photo library, your backups, etc., you should replace it now. Don't wait. Even if you don't put it online right away, you should get it before they're all gone. Just before we started recording, I showed Jeff a little pile of hard drives that I have in a cabinet, and I was meaning to ask my neighbor, the farmer, if I could use a sledgehammer, because one good way to make hard drives unrecoverable is to hit them with a sledgehammer. The plates inside are made of glass and it shatters them. And so you hit each one with a sledgehammer, you take it to recycling, and you're safe.
Wait, what's made of glass?
The plates, the spinning bladders? Plates inside the hard drives.
They're not glass.
They are.
Are they?
You didn't know that? No, they're glass
things
with a magnetic coating.
No.
Yeah.
I should know this. But
because you wrote a book. the
I never got to the.
I wrote an article for a client 5-6 years ago showing how to make hard drives unrecoverable, and I showed the process of unscrewing a hard drive and breaking the platters because they're glass. So if you take a sledgehammer, unless they have a new technology these days, I'm going to Kagi this quickly.
Okay. Well, while you're doing that, this brings up an excellent point also, because we're talking about the storage of your computer. We're talking about SD cards, but of course you have all of your photos stored on likely external hard drives and also backups. And so this is also a really good time to say, all right, how old are these disks? How often are they being used? Because spinning hard drives, they can basically get stuck if you don't use them on a regular basis. This is also a reason why you mentioned that stack of old hard drives that you have. I also have a stack of like 1, 2, 4 terabyte drives that I've upgraded. Can I use those again? I mean, I probably maybe I could set them up, like buy a little RAID enclosure and set that up as external storage.
Or not even a RAID enclosure, just an enclosure that holds 4 drives, not with the RAID thing. You know, the RAID enclosures are expensive. You can get a basic enclosure that holds 4 drives, and they'll mount as 4 separate drives with 1 cable. I mean, some of them are as simple as 2 drives, and I had a LaCie for a while that had 2 drives. They show up as 2 drives. Some of them are 4 or 6. OWC makes one. I think Ugreen, the Chinese company, makes one that I had in the past. So they're easy to find. But then that means you don't have to worry about drivers or software or anything in the RAID stuff. There are 2 reasons to use RAID. One is for the redundancy. So you copy something to one disk, it copies automatically to the second.
Right.
And the other is that protection. Right. And you have different levels, 0, 1, 2, and 5 in RAID. And at the highest level, you use 5 drives to get the value of 2 drives. Anyway, we're straying a little bit. But you don't need to go RAID, because RAID can complicate things if you just want to back up things. And I have one of those, what do you call it? The thing that looks like a toaster where you slide the hard drive in and you copy your data, and then you take it out, you slide another hard drive in. And if you want to do, your once a week backup of your photo library, that's a good way to do it. So you're not plugging in a whole bunch of drives, but you're also cycling through multiple drives to make sure if one fails, you've got another one.
Yeah, I've used little disk toasters for a long time, because what I don't want is to have to deal with a bunch of power bricks and cords and make sure that I have this one plugged into the right thing. And
while we were ranting, Wikipedia says laptop hard drive platters are made from glass, while aluminum platters are often found in desktop computers. I think you would only find aluminum platters in enterprise quality hard drives, not consumer hard drives. All the ones that I have, you hit them with a sledgehammer and you can hear them rattle.
I need to grab one of my old 256 gigabyte ones, hit it with a sledgehammer, see what happens.
And it continues to say, in disk manufacturing, a thin coating is deposited on both sides of the substrate, mostly by a vacuum deposition process called magnetron sputtering.
Cool.
Magnetron sputtering would be a good name for a Kraftwerk-inspired electropop band.
See, we are not above going into deep down rabbit holes, but this is, honestly, this is kind of like why we bring up topics like this and why I wrote a book about storage, because you think it's going to be this really simple thing. Like, I just need something that has a bigger number than the thing that I have already. And so I get one that's 256 or 4 terabytes or 8 terabytes, and it's not. There's more complexity, and especially if we're in a position where there may be fewer things to choose from, what do you do then?
We have the advantage of being old enough to have lived through all these generations, from the floppy disk to the zip drive to, all these different things up to SSDs. Young people these days, they grow up not knowing what it was like when you'd have to use multiple zip drives, and you would have to, I forget what the word, you'd make a zip archive. So zip archive and zip drive, they're 2 different things. Which was the company called?
iOmega.
iOmega. They made these things called zip drives. A zip archive, if you wanted to put it on multiple zip drives, you had to segment it to put it onto the zip drives, and you'd copy them back, and and it was like.
Yes, but you had 100 megabytes on a single cartridge,
amazing.
And that was amazing.
At the time, it was.
And it was affordable, too.
Yeah.
Amazing. I had a zip drive in my PowerBook, my PowerBook G3.
Yeah.
They made a zip drive that you could slot into one of the drive containers. Yeah. That was the coolest thing for about, 6 months.
It's true that
not that we're dating ourselves here.
The history of computing is the history of storage, right? That you should put that in your book, because the storage is needed because more data is needed, because the processor's faster and it can handle more data. It can do more with more data. I remember the original QuickTime videos when they came out. They were like the size of postage stamps. Now we get 4K videos, right? The amount of data, it's probably 10,000 times the amount of data for a minute as it was back in the day. And of course, we have the bandwidth to move all of this data around. We have the networking to move it around locally. But all of this progression, and if you go from that 1 megapixel digital camera that I bought in 2001 to my 60 megapixel that I have now, all of these things are just progress in terms of storage.
Yeah, that actually brings up a good point. You had mentioned the lifespan of an SSD, and when I did look it up in my book, we don't quite know like what exactly that is, but let's say you are recording and editing video really, really intensely. That's going to use up the life of your SSD a lot faster than sort of the normal that we do. But again, reiterating this, I've not had any types of, failures like that so far.
Ever.
Ever.
My use of SSDs in computers goes back to 2008. I had the very first MacBook Air with an SSD that a client gifted me.
Right.
And that, I think it was a 60 gigabyte. It was it was an odd number. It wasn't 64. It was 60 or 56 or something like that. And it was just so amazingly fast for the time, compared to 4,200 RPM spinning mini drives. So, 18 years I've been using SSDs. Time to retire. Damn, this has been too long. All right, this was a really deep dive. Do we want to do snapshots, or do you think people are tired of listening to us?
I think people are tired of listening to us, and also because I forgot to find a snapshot this week.
That's an excellent reason. So until next time, Jeff.
Until next time, everybody.
Thanks for listening to Photoactive. You can find show notes, including any photos we discuss in this episode, at photoactive.co. That's photoactive.co. We couldn't afford the M. You can join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/photoactivecast. That's photoactivecast in one word. You can subscribe to Photoactive in your favorite podcast app or on Apple Podcasts. See the links on our website. And think about leaving us a rating or review in iTunes or in your podcast.